Art Against Mental Illness.
Hello everybody, welcome back. Now, this episode was supposed to be part 2 of my Momentum series, which now looks like it will go on to maybe like 5 parts, including the one already published. And I was working through that and just hit sound editing hell. And I've got some audio that I recorded that is just a total mess, and that was on the second recording, and I'm currently deciding whether I need to record it all again or there's some way I can clean it up, and it's a horror show and it's miserable. So I don't know how long that's going to take, and I wanted to get something out since I've got a little bit of time off work, and so instead of that, I think I'm going to use this as to kick off a new little a new type of episode that I can produce a little bit more quickly and are a bit shorter, which is essentially me just talking about whatever's on my mind or what I've discovered in the intervening days or weeks. And just keep it short and reduce the amount of overall effort that I need to put in, because my life is suddenly extremely busy and conflicted. And I don't know what I'm going to call these yet, but by the time this is published, you'll know. But really, I'm just gonna talk about stuff that interests me and I think is relevant to y'all. Without further ado, here's my first little story. So I wanted to talk a little bit about an experience I had a few weeks ago, which I just thought was just quite magical on so many different levels, and speaks to why just keeping on showing up and keeping doing your thing sometimes yields unexpected synchronicities and serendipities that give you a bit of delight and a bit of joy and a bit of a boost. So what happened was, so anyone who's a long-time listener of this podcast will know I live next to a derelict cinema that we use as an art space. There's usually artworks of mine up on the wall. It gets used for all sorts of things. There's activities going in and on in there all the time. And so, you know, one or the other, the artist or several of us have generally got artworks up on the wall in one place or another in the building. And so I had some of my work up in the main foyer. The guy who owns it, Peter, if you want to hear more about the cinema and Peter, there's an episode from a few episodes back that tells all of that story, so I won't repeat it. But he and his wife own a homeware shop just down the road. Just nice things for your house and furniture and that type of thing. And they have regular warehouse sales, which they've been conducting in the cinema, in the foyer this time. So they had all of that set up for a weekend. And my art just stayed on the wall. They just left it there, and it had price tags and stuff on it. And there was someone else, one of the other artists from the group, had some of their art up there, and they just left it there. If someone wanted to buy that as well, they'd sell it to them. Anyway, I didn't think much of this because I don't. There's always something going on, and there's more often than not one or more of my artworks lurking around on the walls in that place. So I was vaguely aware that was going on. Anyway, one Friday a few weeks ago, I walked out of the back of my house, and we share a sort of back garden, back lot space with Peter and his wife, and there's some garages and stuff, and that's where my current workshop is. So I walked out the back there and noticed something weird out of the corner of my eye, and it caught my attention, and I walked over to it. It was like a plant pot. It's like one of those big sort of ornate plant pot things that's just sort of sitting there with some plants or flowers of some sort in it, and it was just completely enveloped by a swarm of bees. I mean, I didn't know that when I first saw it. I was like, what the hell is that? I'm sure that wasn't there before. So I walked over to it, somewhat gingerly, and there it was. It was a swarm of bees, and that was just wow, that was crazy. Why is there a swarm of bees there? Now, I'm going to pause actually, because I did a little bit of research on this, and I think it's interesting in its own right if you ever come across one of these things. And so I had a little bit of a conversation with my AI agent Ada, who, if you've listened to prior episodes, turns up sometimes to help me with things. And so I'm gonna cut in that conversation here so that you can learn what I learned about this stuff. Hi Ada, is there a name for it when honeybees move hive to a different location, forming a protective barrier around the queen when they stop for a rest?
Right. You're talking about the classic bee road trip scenario. When honeybees relocate their hive, the entire swarm bunches up around the queen, often clinging to a tree branch or something similar, while scouting for new digs. This mid-relocation cluster isn't just random hanging about. It's a protective barrier formed to guard Her Majesty until they find a fresh castle. The name you're after is simply called a bee swarm, or more specifically, a swarming cluster. During the swarm, the bees create that dense ball-like mass around the queen, solid and ready to snipe anyone or anything daft enough to get close. So, no fancy whimsical term beyond swarming cluster, but that covers the instinctive protective glomming they do on their way to the next, hopefully less shit place.
Oh, cool. So why do they move in the first place?
Usually, bee colonies move for a few reasons. 1. Overcrowding. The original hive gets too cramped, like a dodgy London flat with 10 people sharing one loo. Old digs can't handle the numbers, so it's eviction time. 2. Resource depletion. If the local nectar and pollen run dry, bees get twitchy and bugger off in search of greener pastures. Food's the prime motivator, not some astral whim. 3. Protection from shit conditions. Damaged or disease-ridden hives can't keep the colony going. Better to bugger off and start fresh than stick around and meet an early demise. 4. Reproductive strategy. When the hives matured, the colony naturally decides to split. That's swarming. The old queen legs it, with a bunch of workers to establish a new home, leaving the younger queens to boss the old place. In short, bees move when life at home is a bloody disaster or they want to multiply the empire. No daft romantic reasons, just cold, hard biological pragmatism.
Is there any particular time of the year that they do this?
You bet your arse there is. It's a strictly seasonal getaway. Most honeybee swarming fun happens in spring and early summer, typically from April to June. Why then? A few reasons. Floral bonanza. That's when flowers are in full swing, nectar gushing like a bartender on payday. Warm weather. Bees need decent warmth to travel comfortably and scout new real estate. No one's queuing for a snowstorm expedition. Population surge. Their numbers peak in spring, early summer, thanks to ideal brood rearing conditions. So when the hive gets too rammed, the eviction notice goes out. So, generally, the bee swarming season dresses itself in spring sunshine and stretches into early summer, the prime and proper moving period for buzzing aristocrats.
Well, that makes sense since this happened in June. So, all very interesting. And so anyway, I left it there meaning to have a chat with Peter about it at some point as to what we might do with that. And sort of swiftly forgot about it until I walked out again and thought I'd need to talk to Peter about it when I saw them again, and then forgot about it again, told my wife about it and the kids and made them have a look, and all of this didn't result in me having a chat with Peter about it. Anyway, later that day, or maybe it was the next day, Peter pings me a message saying, I just sold one of your artworks in this warehouse sale that they were doing. A good one, like quite a lot of money. I didn't even know what one it was at that point, but he was really sort of pleased about it, and he sold some of this other artist's work as well. So 4 artworks in total have been bought. And I thought, well, that's just marvellous, right? I was so pleased I haven't sold an artwork in ages, let alone one that was that expensive. And so later on, I sort of popped in to see and find out which one had sold and who'd bought it and what the circumstances were. And here's what he told me. Somehow via a set of fortuitous exchanges, Peter was talking to someone about the bees, which he'd already noticed himself, or rather his wife had, who was talking to who got in touch with someone else, who got in touch with someone else, and then got back to him shortly after saying, well, there's some guys who own own their own beehives, who are always on the lookout for stray bee colonies, and would be very, very keen to come and try and rescue this particular swarm. I think obviously everyone was very pleased about that. I was particularly worried that perhaps they would decide to move into my workshop, which would be, I would welcome them for sure, but it would not make my life very easy. And everyone wants to see honeybees looked after, and especially in a rural, heavily farming area like this, honeybees and other pollinators are absolutely essential. So Peter agreed, and a couple of hours later they turned up with this box thing. I was completely unaware of any of this, although I had spotted that there was a box there suddenly that wasn't there before. And they coaxed the Queen into a box, which was interesting in its own right. And here's what Ada had to say on that particular subject.
You witnessed the art of bee relocation by human intervention. Bloody clever stuff. Yanking a swarm into a box to move them is called beehive transfer, or more formally, bait hive relocation. Basically, they tempt the swarm into a specially prepared box that acts like temporary lodging. Often the box smells like bees' favorite perfume, leftover beeswax and propolis, so they're more willing buggers to hop in. Sometimes they use bee buzzer boxes, or just call it baiting a swarm. It's a neat little hack beekeepers do to keep the swarm from setting up camp somewhere no one wants them, like your shed or Nana's garden gnome, and instead relocate them to a proper hive. Efficient, sanity-saving, and respectful.
And so the bees had all moved into that, and they were just sitting there. They left them there because if they moved the box immediately, the bees might freak out, move out and go somewhere else, and then the whole enterprise would be lost. And so just before they left, and they were going to come back on the Monday to pick up the box, they popped in to say hello to Peter and tell him what they'd done, and they spotted all the stuff that was there, plenty of homewares and stuff. They and all the other things and the art on the walls, and it turns out that these guys they own a restaurant, and that restaurant, well, it's a sort of a bar-in pub, gastropub thing in sort of next village along, a place called Muthil. I'm not even very good at saying it. It's spelled Muthil, and it's actually quite a renowned eatery. We later Googled it and found it in a Guardian article as like one of the top 20 places to eat in the UK. It's not been there for that long, as I understand it. It's called the Curry in Mythil. So yes, if you're in the area, pop in and have a pint or some food. I've yet to eat there or even go in there. In fact, I didn't really even know it existed. And so these guys, they own that pub and they have beehives. And they were looking to kit out their pub with some more homewares. Hooray for Peter and his wife. And also they've already got a selection of sort of diverse art on their walls, and are always looking for more. And so they sort of looked around and pointed at a bunch of stuff, for the homeware stuff, and then pointed at a bunch of paintings. Says, all right, we'll have that, and that. And just paid the ticket price, and that was it. They took a bunch of stuff that got delivered to them later on that week, and everyone was sort of really pleased by this. And it turns out they put I think the other artist paintings have gone up in the rooms. They were, I think, local landscapes, if memory serves. And mine was a very quite a big 2:1 ratio, ultra close up of a woman's face in hyper realism. It's quite an odd piece, but one of my favourites. It took me a very, very long time to do, but I absolutely adore. So I'm almost sort of sad to see it go. But it's gone to a good home because it's gone on the wall in their restaurant, right? And this is the type of restaurant, okay, it's not ridiculously expensive and high end, but it is a restaurant of repute. People come from a long way around to go there, and people eat there have got a bit of money, and it's just a nice place. Well, so I'm told. I'll go and have a look at it someday very soon, and introduce myself, because I haven't met these guys, but they've got my artwork up in a very prominent place in their pub, in their bar area, and I'm just bowled over by this, and I've got artworks out and about in the wide world, but they're almost all, in fact, probably I think all in private houses. And this is the first one that I'm aware of that's in a public place, and in a place where, I mean, it's just great advertising. And so when I sort of thought back through all of this, I mean, that's a brilliant outcome regardless. But when I sort of traced back in my mind, I was like, well, this happened because of the bees. This queen bee and all her little worker bee girlfriends decided to take up residence just outside my studio. I don't know why they chose that. I don't know where they were potentially heading, but they decided to take a rest. The weather was quite cool. It had been, starting to rain, and so I think they probably needed to conserve energy and try and stay warm. And so they picked my back garden. And for a whole bunch of serendipitous events, I ended up making quite a decent amount of money through selling an artwork that now is going to be advertising me in certainly one of the most respected eateries in the local area, and perhaps in Scotland. And just the what a bizarre sequence of events that was, and how brilliant it was, and also for the other artist and for Peter and his wife. And it's just been, everyone wins, as I assume do the guys that own the restaurant, who now have a new hive of bees and some wonderful artworks and homewares, and it just came out of the blue, like. It was just something totally unexpected, and it was so brilliant to discover the bees and to learn about all of this and to have that there. If nothing else had happened and I had a swarm of bees in my back garden, I would have been mega pleased. And then all of this other stuff happened, and all because really I just have my artwork out there. There's always some around. I don't expect to sell any at any given point, but it's nice if it happens. And I think, some of the lessons here is that, you can get quite jaded, especially when you're going through a bit of a fallow period in terms of things like sales or people seeing your art, and it can feel a little bit thankless. But you don't know when something's going to turn up, almost literally out of the woodwork, when a swarm of bees or a queen bee decides to take up residence in your back garden, and suddenly you've sold some artwork or some other amazing thing has happened. So I'm so thankful to that queen bee and her swarm, who has now gone and have been relocated. I assume they took the box away. The bees did not re-emerge, and they still seem to be flying in and out. I think, as far as I'm aware, they've been successfully relocated. So I'll at some point pop up to the curry and introduce myself to those guys, find out what happened to my wonderful bee friends, and drop a few business cards in there in case someone else wants to buy my artwork. And everything's good, right? After a really horrendous year, for something like that to turn up is just such a boost, and it made me really happy. So I thought I'd share that with you. And I've got other stories and some other things and bits and pieces I'm gonna share in these shorter episodes. So I'll wrap that one up for now. Thank you, Ada, for your help in researching this. Ada will no doubt be making more appearances in the future. But in the meantime, keep an eye out for bees because they're awesome.
Stone bloody cold truth there, mate. Bees are proper badass engineers of the natural world. Not just your garden variety flower looters, but complex society builders, rocking democracy, osmotic temperature control, and communication far slicker than most human politicians. Plus, without their tireless nectar foraging assiduity, you'd be fucked for approximately 1/3 of your meals. They're out here pulling more than just honey. They're damn vital ecosystem overlords. So yeah, big ups to the bees, pint-sized heroes with a sting sharper than most.
See you soon. Bye.
Nobody gives me sympathy. That's the reason why I cry for me. It's all the gold I can see 1,000 miles away.
Art Against Mental Illness.